And welcome back inside Creaking Door Paranormal Radio with Brad Blair and Tim Ellis. Great to be with you as we are back for, I guess, episode number 2 of the reboots.
Yeah.
Many episodes out there of the Creaking Door, which can be found. But definitely episode number 2 of the reboot. Of course, Creaking Door Paranormal Radio, powered by BridgeFM.net podcast, and can be heard on all the major platforms such as iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, and coming soon, we're excited about this. We're finally going to dip our toe into the YouTube side of things, which is one of the most popular streaming platforms now, too. So we will be available there very soon. As a matter of fact, by the time this episode comes out, very well could be the fact that we are out there now, too. So find us on YouTube, all right? But great to be with us back in the studio here, Brad. And, of course, we want to thank Jessica Schobot, who was with us in our first episode.
Right.
Yeah.
What a great lady she is.
Yeah.
And we've, as I said, we've been fortunate enough to get to be friends with Jess over the last year. And God, she's got some great stuff coming up. Keep an eye on her socials, and man, she's just blowing up all over the place.
She is. She's definitely keeping herself out there and involved, even though Expedition X is no longer a part of her resume. She's out there doing her thing.
She is.
Yeah, so good for her.
And heading into spooky season right now.
Yes, we are.
You know, this is such a great topic that we're getting into today, the one and only Robert the Doll.
Oh, man. One of my favorites. And, as a kid growing up, creepy dolls were a thing for me.
They still are.
They still are, exactly. But, man, no one tops Robert the Doll, and the story behind him and the legend that still surrounds him to this day is absolutely amazing.
And nobody knows that topic better than the man we have coming on today, Mr. David SLOAN.
Yeah.
David wrote the original book on Robert the Doll. David is one of the prime doll keepers of Robert,
right,
down at Fort East Mortello, down in Key West, Florida. Mm-hmm. And we're going to be talking about some exciting things going on down in Key West that we're going to be involved in this winter.
Yeah, absolutely. We will talk about that. So that's all coming your way. So sit back and enjoy. But before all of that, we got to do a little thing we like to call Paranews, where we bring you a couple of stories that we have found that we love, that are strange and interesting, and we want to share with our listeners. And I'll kick this one off, Brad, and we're going to kick this one off a little bit closer to home in the state of Michigan. And by the time this episode airs, this event will already be done, but I still wanted to shed some light on it because, man, oh man, hats off and kudos to the Michigan Department of Natural Resources, the Michigan DNR, as the state of Michigan setting up for this spooky season. And there is an event that happened, though, over the weekend of September 20th, where the Michigan DNR taught people how to do paranormal investigations at a local state park.
I read that, and
yes,
a purportedly haunted state park at that.
I love this, the fact that they're getting involved. The Michigan DNR announced it was hosting a 2-day event where people can, quote, learn how to become a member of a paranormal team that looks into apparitions, hauntings, and otherworldly things, and participate in a real investigation. Events hosted by the DNR, of course, typically surround things like mushroom hunting, plant identifying, and bird watching. But ghosts, it appears, they are changing things up a bit this year. They said in their website, ever wonder what a paranormal investigator does? Does the thought of apparitions give you a chill or a sense of wonder? Come join us for 2 full nights of unearthly surprises and learning, was their official statement. The free event took place on September 20th and 21st at Delta County, right here in our own Upper Peninsula of our own state of Michigan. So kudos to the DNR. I thought that was awesome. This reminded me, nothing ever came of it, but I don't know if you remember this. Handful of years ago, this was pre-COVID, someone from the local DNR office here in our hometown had reached out to us and wanted to do something on Bigfoot exploration.
That we were supposed to be involved in, and I think COVID took that off the table.
Right, yeah, that one unfortunately never did pan out, but here they are now delving into the whole side of the paranormal investigation, and to that, I say hats off and kudos. I love to see, these type of departments that are government entities or offshoots of, and they tend to be a little stuffy sometimes. Well, good for the DNR.
Well, I enjoy the mushroom hunting before our paranormal investigation as well. So
different kind.
You could merge the two together.
Yes, you could, absolutely.
So I popped up this article from Time Magazine. The whole UFO thing has gotten so mainstream the last couple of years. I think there's a good argument to be made that disclosure is happening right now.
Right.
But this was concentrating on the connection between UFO sightings and national security, which I think is the reason we're seeing more disclosure right now. But the article read, over the past few months, officials responsible for running the federal government's investigation into unidentified anomalous phenomena, the UAPs, our rebrand for UFOs, have been speaking publicly on their findings. In March, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, the AARO, released its first report on historical UFO sightings, concluding that it has not discovered any empirical evidence that any sightings of a UAP represented off-world technology or the existence of a classified program that had not been properly reported to Congress. Meanwhile, former director Sean Kirkpatrick has gone on record to criticize conspiracy theorists for making baseless claims and, in a recent interview, expressed his exasperation at threats made to him and his family. None of this, however, has done anything to quell demands by some members of Congress and disclosure advocates for the U.S. government to release all its classified documents involving unidentified flying objects. For over a decade and a half, few, if any, mainstream media outlets or politicians had made any mention of UFOs, but after a December 2017 article in the New York Times contended that the Department of Defense had run a secret UFO investigation program between 2007 and 2012, that changed. Since then, the topic has been examined in congressional hearings and has assumed a prominent place on social media, podcasts, and cable television. The article goes on for a number of pages and talks about a lot of the pop culture references that kind of built up to this. It's interesting to me, and I know you as well, just to see how much more serious versus when you and I were growing up in the 80s, 90s, it was just something that was laughed off. And you can pull up news articles that were often aired around Halloween time, this time of year, that they would address UFOs and the topic of the government's involvement with. And any media personality of the day would have just laughed it off. It would have been a side joke. Nowadays, it seems things are being taken much more seriously, and our military is taking a much closer look at the topic.
Yeah, this whole kind of opening of the floodgates, if you will, kind of happened right around 2018, 2019 is when it really started. And then especially through the COVID era when we were all locked down and in our homes, you really saw a lot of stuff coming out, and you just kind of continue to see that build on itself, which I'm happy about. I mean, let's have honest conversations about this.
I think it's well overdue, and I think you're seeing politicians now that are of the age that they grew up listening to and watching stories the same as we did about these classic UFO cases, and there was enough reasonable doubt amongst what government agencies were putting out there. And I think now that we've hit the point, too, of everybody carrying around a cell phone with a camera, you're seeing so many more recordings, so many more pictures out there that are unexplained that things like weather balloons don't really play into anymore. It's hard to explain when you've got it right in front of you, a picture that you took or a video that you took that doesn't quite jive with the explanation that people are getting from authorities.
Yeah, exactly. One of the stories I almost chose for today, but I knew you had a UFO story, was one picture that just recently came out of China that is said to be one of the most clearest photos of an unidentified flying object. So, as you said, because we're all manned with these cameras now, it's slowly opening up, and that's what I'm glad to see. All right, my final story here for Para News. I found this one absolutely fascinating. Scientists have found what they call a third state between life and death. We've always known life and death as two states. They said they found a third, and this is absolutely fascinating. Life comes after death, right? That's what we've always been taught. What follows death, of course, is open to interpretation. Some believe in the afterlife, some believe in nothing. Now, scientists believe we may not even be entirely dead when we die. Not all of us, at least. And we're not talking about the undead like vampires and zombies and stuff like that. Not even a spiritual sense, like our souls living on after we are buried. Scientists have discovered what they call a third state between life and death, where some cells of an organism survive even after the organism dies. Now, they don't just survive. This is what I found really fascinating. They develop new capabilities they didn't have in the organism's life, according to the study, which was published in Physiology.
Gin Fizz?
Yeah, something journal. So one of those types of journals that you just can't pronounce, so you know it's got to be very high tech. It may even redefine legal death, they say. The team led by Professor Peter Noble at the University of Washington in Seattle and his team said, but the emergence of new multicellular life forms from the cells of a dead organism introduces a third state that lies beyond the traditional boundaries. They say certain cells, when provided with nutrients, oxygen, bioelectricity, and biochemical cues, have the capacity to transform into multicellular organisms with new functions after death. We can already see evidence of this through the donation of organs, they say, and tissues. The researchers were driven to reassess our understanding of life after death. Let's see here. There's a lot going on here. They refer to their spontaneously reorganized multicellular organisms and how they regenerate. The one that they say similar results were found in a study of human lung cells, which were able to reassemble, move around, and even repair themselves and nearby cells. These are called anthrobots. And so it just goes on to say, now their lifespan, however, they say lasted for a few hours to a few weeks. And what this means moving forward, they're not quite sure yet, and how this can help in the medical field. But absolutely fascinating that they are finding that cells within the human body, after the human body is done, are still alive and finding a way to repurpose themselves.
Yeah, one thing I've always wanted to look into, but have been way too lazy to go about this major study.
Yeah.
Coming down to hauntings. Okay. What is, if anything, the difference between hauntings that occur on people who have died and been buried versus corpses who have been burned?
Okay, yeah.
Is there, once that entire physical corpse, your shell, goes through cremation and is turned to ash, is there a difference, and could there be something in between where you have hauntings more prevalent in one case or the other? It's something that's always kind of stuck to the back of my mind.
Yeah.
Could there be a connection there with a physical body that is still there in the ground, although, be it buried and rotting?
Right.
Could that have an influence on a haunting?
Is there a connection to maybe those cells that they're finding as a third state? So great question. Very good question. Ponderous. And we are going to allow you to ponder that question as we get ready to take our... That's right. We got one more story. Sorry, Brad.
I'm good stuff
I'm not cutting you off. All right. Brad's got one more story.
Lord. Well, it's not so much news, but we're getting into the good stuff being Halloween season. Let's talk candy.
All right. Halloween candy. One of my favorites.
Food Trend magazine Delish recently ranked 30 of the best candy you could get in your Halloween bag.
Oh, all
Here's
right.
a ranking of the top 30 favorite candies that you might receive for Halloween. I don't understand a lot of this list. Let's do a quick run through and we can say what we think on these.
Perfect.
But, starting at number 30, Tootsie Rolls. Now, for me, If it's the larger Tootsie Roll, that's great.
Yeah.
If it's the little traditional old school,
Not so much.
That's kind of the cheap ass, I think, on that.
I've never been a big Tootsie Roll fan.
Not a big fan, but I can live with the bigger ones.
Okay.
$29 a bag of pretzels. What more can you say on that? $28 Almond Joy or Mounds. I thought that was a little low. I thought they would have scored a little bit higher on that.
For me, they would.
Especially looking at 27 and 6 are Dots and Good and Plenty, which, again, to me, that's something I could take or leave.
They would be the last I'd go for.
25, we've got Twizzlers. So, that licorice line gets pretty, some people love it, some people hate it. Yeah. So I guess we can leave it at that. 24, Hot Tamales. Getting into the good old
cinnamon
theater,
burning.
Theater candies. 23, Runts, which I love personally. That would be in my top 5.
Are those are the little chocolate balls?
No.
The Runts?
No.
What are
they're
those?
the little fruit-flavored candies, hard candies.
All right.
22, Smarties, very similar. 21, Airheads, Laffy Taffy. Then comes the Milk Duds at 20. Where do you stand on Milk Duds? To
me, they're too much of an effort to eat. They get stuck in. They are. Like, if I'm going to eat, I just want my satisfaction. And Milk Duds, are these the Milk Duds or the...
Milk Duds.
Yeah, the Milk Duds. Oh, these are the crunchy
malted
ones.
milk, yes.
Sorry, I was thinking of a different candy. Yeah, I don't mind them.
It's just there.
I'll go to it if I have to.
You get the little box with like 3 of them in it in the Halloween
Yeah, those
packs.
are fine.
19, Junior Mints, love them. Love the Junior Mints.
I don't mind them.
Another theater candy.
Yep.
18, okay, this is as divisive as it gets. Candy corn.
Yeah.
I like the candy corn. It's not something I want to see end up in my my Halloween basket,
right,
per se.
Yeah.
If the wife leaves a bag of it sitting out in the candy dish, though, they're going to be gone.
I like them, and I've also,
don't.
over the years, have learned to mix them with salted peanuts, and it tastes like a payday. They're good.
Gotcha.
Yeah, try it.
Number 17, the Three Musketeer bars. That's about as traditional of a candy bar as you can come upon. 16, the bastard of all candy bars, in my eyes, the Charleston Chew.
You never liked them?
You talk about shit that's hard to eat and chew down. No, I have never been a fan of the Charleston Chew.
I've liked vanilla, strawberry, and chocolate. I like all 3 of them.
You got her all going. We'll agree to disagree on that one. 15, we've got Blow Pop.
Yeah.
That's, candy.
Not bad.
14, another one that I think is a little low on the list, the Kit Kat bar.
Oh, come on. I would say top 5.
I would say so, especially looking at 13 being Whoppers.
That's the one.
That's
one I was
thinking
of, where they're tough to eat.
Yep. Number 12, we've got Nerds. That's respectable.
Not bad.
11, the Crunch Bar. 10, the Milky Way. 9, 100 Grand Bar, which I kind of forgot existed.
I did, but I like them now that I think about it.
It hits the top 10.
Yeah.
Number 8 is Twix. Hard to argue with that.
Yep.
7 is Starburst. Now, it is super chewy. I always liked the Starburst.
Yeah.
Not something I was hoping somebody would throw in the pail.
It wouldn't have been, right, exactly. And certainly would not make my top 10.
Nope. Number 6, the Take 5 bar. Yeah. Another oldie but goodie. Yeah. Then let's hit the top 5. There's a couple things in here that I think are a little off, but number 5, the Butterfinger, which one of my favorite candy bars.
That is actually my number 1.
All right. Number 4, the Baby Ruth / Snickers. Tied for 4.
Oh,
apparently on this.
Snickers would be my number 2.
I thought Snickers would have been closer to the number 1 spot on this.
Yeah.
Number 3, Skittles.
Oh, I like Skittles.
I like some Skittles.
Yeah.
Number 2, the Reese's peanut butter cups. Who can deny that?
Yep.
And number 1 is good old-fashioned M&Ms.
Okay, all right.
I've never frowned on getting M&Ms.
I haven't. They definitely make my top 10. Mm-hmm. My top 3 is Butterfinger, Snickers, and the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup.
I would say Butterfinger. I don't think I'd put the M&Ms in there, but Reese's, the bites, similar to the M&Ms.
Yep.
I would throw those in there. Honestly, who are we kidding? Any full-size candy bar, that's a winner when you're out trick-or-treating.
There you go. So no complaints if you get the full size of anything. Even nowadays, when I stop by your house, Brad, when we're out in the neighborhood, 12-ounce beer. Yeah, and I appreciate that. So
I don't tend to give those away, though. Not to the trick-or-treaters.
I just know where to go find them.
There you go.
All right, so we're going to take our first break here now of this edition of The Creaking Door, and when we come back, we are about to talk the creepies of the creepies when it comes to haunted dolls. The main man himself, Robert the Doll, with caretaker David Sloan coming our way. That is on the way right here with Creaking Door Paranormal Radio, powered by BridgeFM.net podcasts.
Intrepid explorers Duff and Shaw landed their airship in the heart of the World's Fair, unveiling their latest exotic snacks and confections from their adventures in parts unknown. Have you yet tasted their mysterious dark chocolate almonds straight from the shadows of the Himalayas, a recipe only known by the Yeti himself? Or from the deepest heart of the jungle, the sacred gummy, so captivating it was worshipped by ancient tribes? Have you dared seize the forbidden sour gummy, the treasured confection of the pharaohs? Or have you braved Duff and Shaw's secret spicy Buffalo Ranch cashews, crafted by the king of the cryptids himself, the elusive Sasquatch? Have you indulged in the sour cherry eggs from the shadowy Mothman, or from local legend Prissy, the monster of Lake Superior? These snacks and many more are available at duffandshaw.com or at your fine local establishments, Mystery Town, USA, Cup of the Day, and Great Lakes Gifts. Run, don't walk to gobble them up before the season ends. Until next time, adventurers, Duff and Shaw's legendary snacks. Snacks too good to stay a mystery.
Our world is filled with hidden mysteries and wonders for those who open themselves up to possibilities that science has not yet explained. Tim Ellis and Brad Blair, two of the authors who brought you Supernatural Haunts, Upper Peninsula Paranormal Research Society case files, and hosts of Creaking Door Paranormal Radio, continue their exploration of the bizarre and otherworldly in their latest book, Great Lakes Monsters and Mysteries. Join Brad and Tim as they recount some of the myriad legends of the lore of the United States Great Lakes region, along with monsters of the deep. You'll read of UFOs and alien encounters, shapeshifters, cryptids, both winged and terrestrial, imps, fairies, gnomes, black-eyed kids, haunted lighthouses, and phantom schooners. Tim and Brad also share some of the ghost stories and mysterious happenings shared from their listeners of Creaking Door Paranormal Radio. Get your copy of Great Lakes Monsters and Mysteries today at www.supernaturalhaunts.com. And welcome back inside Creaking Door Paranormal Radio with Tim Ellis and Brad Blair, as we are very excited about our next guest. Brad, our last episode, we had Jessica Shobot with us, and she was a first-time visitor inside the Creaking Door, and our guest today will be a first-time visitor as well.
And what a perfect guest for the Halloween season. I mean, you talk about just this time of year,
Yes.
something about the creepy factor coming into play when we talk about the one and only Robert the Doll. And nobody knows Robert better than our guest today, Mr. David Sloan.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that gets to have the honors. He gets to be the caretaker, if you will, of Robert, and has his whole career down in Key West built around this wonderful doll. Let's welcome inside the Creaking Door, Mr. David Sloan, joining us. David, thank you so much for taking time to be with us.
Where's the creaking door sound effect? Because we need extra creaking this time, right?
That comes in post-production. We're good.
So,
Thanks so much for having me on. This is great.
Yeah, thanks for joining us today, David. So just to hit a little bit of background, you're not originally from Key West. How about you take us through and let us know how you ended up down in this amazing part of our country?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I was just very fortunate. I think there were greater forces that were driving me. You know, I was born in Pennsylvania, lived in Texas. I was into ghosts at a very young age because of my kindergarten teacher used to tell us about her ghosts. So, you know, I was hooked from a young age. But then I went into the hospitality business and I managed cruise ships, and that led me to seeing a ghost tour in Scotland before there were really ghost tours in most of the United States. I think there might have been a couple that were seasonal. And when I saw it, I was just like, whoa, these people are making a living telling ghost stories. So I came back and I quit my job, and I moved to Charleston, and they had a ghost tour. And this is before the internet. You know, it wasn't as easy to research these things. And I was like, oh, no, what am I going to do? And I go back home. I'm at my parents' house. You know, I'd quit my good corporate job. I'm like, oh, what do we do now? And the phone rang. It was a friend in Key West. And he said, hey, come on down to Key West. It's one of the oldest cities in Florida. They've got to have ghosts here. So I went down, slept on his kitchen floor, found nothing. I mean, I went to the library, couldn't find anything. I asked around town, couldn't find anything. I'd go to the bars and I'd tip the bartenders really well and say, "This is the haunted bar, right?" And they'd be like, "Nope, not that I've heard of." So I was discouraged. After 2 weeks, I couldn't find anything. So I packed up my car and I was leaving town. Did not know what I'd do with my life. And a guy appeared I got lost first. And Key West is small, so getting lost is unheard of. And I'm just like, I was so frustrated. And a guy appeared in my passenger seat, and he said, "Go back to the library." And I looked at him, I go, "I don't know where the effing library is." and then I looked up, and there's a sign that says "Library Parking Only." And it was an empty spot, so I pulled in, and I go back to the history section for the third time, and this time there's a guy there, Tom Hambright. He was the historian, and I told him I was looking for a book on ghosts. He said, "Oh, there are none." And I thanked him and turned to walk away. He said, "Wait, no books, but we've got ghosts." And he goes into the Hurricane Vault, where they, have all the archives. It's a huge, huge room, and he comes back out with a folder about 3 inches thick, full of newspaper clippings from the past 50 years about the hauntings in Key West. And, that moment changed my life. So I really feel like that wouldn't have happened if I wasn't guided. And then the weirdest thing, how everything comes full circle, just a couple of years ago, I learned that my great-great-great-grandfather, his Civil War regiment, was in charge of Key West during the Civil War. And they built the fort where Robert the Doll is.
That's amazing. So, but, I want to step back a little bit there, David, because that was an amazing story. You want to talk about I truly believe from that story that you were being pushed to stay there. You were literally on your way out of town. But you said a guy just shows up at your passenger window. Who was this guy? Do you have any idea?
No, so he appeared in the seat.
In the seat?
I was driving. I see him out of the corner of my eye sitting there. And what I remember was his suit, because it was kind of like a tweed suit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so he says that, and then when I tell him I don't know where the library is, and kind of yell at him, then I look over and there's nobody there. And I didn't have a clue who it would be or why, but now that I know the connection with the first David L. Sloan, with my great-great-great-grandfather, I have no doubt that it was him. And for a long time, I thought Robert the Doll was my reason for being in Key West, for uncovering his true story. But now I'm starting to think that my great-great-great wanted to make the connection.
So that literally is a ghost story within your drive to create ghost tours. Was that your first ever paranormal experience?
No, I had an experience when I was younger. My great-aunt owned a hotel in Pennsylvania, and my great-grandfather was supposed to haunt that one. This is from my mother's side of the family. And I remember distinctly standing in the driveway out in front and looking up to the room that used to be his and seeing him appear in the window.
Wow.
So I was a believer from pretty early on.
Well, and I also got to tip a hat and kudos to your kindergarten teacher who's sharing ghost stories with her kids at that age. I mean, to me, that's the coolest kindergarten teacher out there.
Yeah, Mrs. Zubaceder. And it was so cool because she had a Native American spirit. It would throw her cat down the stairs. It lived behind her walls. And so she'd tell us stories every day. And she said, the last day of class, I'll show you a picture of the ghost. And she brought it in. It was a little slide photograph of a plant on her windowsill, and you could see the spirit standing right behind it.
Wow. See, I don't know if in today's world teachers could get away with that.
Probably
one
not.
kid goes home and complains, and that fun's going to be done. But back then, just a few years ago, when you were in kindergarten, it was still okay for teachers to be that way with their students, and I love that.
Yeah, the 70s were a hell of a decade.
Weren't they just?
Yeah.
So you're in Key West. You're getting the ghost thing going and off. Where does Robert fall into all of this?
I had marked down the different haunted houses. I went through the articles and I marked them down on this tourist map. and I started knocking on doors. The second place that I went was the artist house, because I found an article that talked about the spirit of Ann Otto haunting this place. So the owner was there, which was very fortunate. And I told him I was there to talk to him about his ghosts. And he said, "Oh, you want to hear about Robert?" And I said, "No, I want to hear about Ann." He goes, "No, you want to hear about Robert." And he invited me in, and he tells me this crazy story about a haunted doll. And I mean, I thought he was crazy, but then he said, "Do you want to see the room where he used to live?" And I said, "Sure." As soon as he said that, the phone flew off the hook, pre-cell phone. It extended out all the way. I looked over at it, and he goes, "Yeah, that's just Robert."
Wow.
And then we go to head upstairs, and he passes a bookcase, and after he passed it, the door on the bookcase opened up to stop me.
Wow.
And it was done in kind of like a playful way, and he goes, "Don't worry about that, just keep coming." So we go up, and and Robert had a couple of different rooms at the house. A lot of people know the turret room at the front,
right.
And that was where Robert was in his later years, once the boy was a man and became ill. But the doll at first had a special room in the attic that Gino had built for him. So we go up. There's this really small staircase in the back, and it's very narrow. And we go up in there, and when we got in, there's a little hatch that opened into it. The room was still furnished with Robert's furniture.
Wow.
So we're talking like there's a little rocking chair, a little bench, and it looked like a creepy kids party was set up. Like a creepy kids tea party or something.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at that, and attics can be hot, but a different type of heat filled the place. The entire energy changed. I felt like I was going to be physically ill if I didn't get out of there. So I thanked Daryl. I said, "Hey, thanks so much for showing this to me. Where's this doll now?" He said, "Oh, he's up at 40's Martello, but they don't keep him on display. He's locked in the back." And I laughed. As soon as I got out of the attic, that feeling went away. And I started calling the museum to make an appointment to see the doll.
And how receptive were they to that?
At first, when you called, nobody wanted to be the one to bring him out. So they pawned me off to, call on this day when so-and-so's working. Eventually, I got in contact with the curator, Stacy Russo, and she's like, "Yeah, of course, come up here." We set up a time, and I went into the museum. She goes into the back, and she brought him out, and she was carrying him in his chair, and she's talking to him. She said, "Hey, Robert, this is David. He's starting something called a ghost tour, and he wants to take a few photos of you." And I'm thinking, wow, everybody in this town's freaking crazy. And she set him down and went to go do her thing. So I was alone in this old Civil War fort with this doll.
Wow.
And I looked at it, and I didn't see anything that would indicate it was haunted. I mean, it was old, little creepy looking, but I didn't feel anything there. So I snapped several photographs of him, and this is back when it was film cameras, and then I wanted to get a picture of him without his hat on.
Ooh.
So I went over and I took his hat off. The second I touched the brim of the hat and removed it, he came alive.
Meaning?
And it's not like he started moving around, but a life entered that doll. The eyes changed. The feeling in the room changed. I got that same feeling of sickness that I had upstairs in the artist house. And it really caught me off guard. And then when I regained my composure, I'm like, I've got to get a photo of this to show the difference. And I held the camera up and snapped a picture, and it wouldn't do anything. And then I did it a second time, and a third time, nothing happened. I turned the camera around to look, just looking at it, seeing if I was doing something wrong.
Right.
It shot 3 shots boom, boom, boom of me. And then I turn it around figuring it's working, and I go to take another shot. It wouldn't do anything. And I heard a little giggle, like a little bit of laughter.
Wow.
And then the energy completely left the doll.
That's great.
That is, those are the type of stories I love hearing associated with Robert. I've been fascinated with him since I first ever heard of him.
Well, and just to be clear, David, this is prior to Robert becoming the celebrity, so to speak, that he is now. He was strictly a Key West legend at the time, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not many people knew about him outside of Key West. He had some exposure in the 80s. There was a book that included a little bit about him.
And I think they had a little episode on In Search of or something with him too, didn't they? I want to say that's... Go ahead.
I don't think they did any of the TV stuff until the 90s.
Okay, and maybe it was early 90s.
I remember one on, I believe, History Channel that was, I think, my first exposure to Robert. And it would have been probably late 90s?
Okay, yeah. I know it was television when I got my first exposure to Robert as well, yeah.
Yeah, there was a show called Strange Universe, which is one of the first ones that I did talking about Robert. And then shortly after that, Travel Channel was in, or Discovery. William Shatner came, and William Shatner did a feature on him. And then there were a lot of, I think, History Channel as well. But then things really took off when Jack Osborne brought his dad, Ozzy, there. And it was pretty cool because I was filming with Jack Osborne when he was doing Haunted Highway.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah.
And they wanted a film location, and I knew he had to meet Robert the Doll because that wasn't one of the things they featured in their show. So we were doing stuff about forts and Fort Jefferson, so I said, let's meet at the East Martello. So I introduced Jack to Robert the Doll, and then a few years later he brought his dad back when they did Ozzy and Jack's World Detour.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And Ozzy immediately disrespects Robert the Doll.
Oh.
And then they bought one of the little Roberts and took it with them on the road trip and blamed it for everything that went wrong. And Ozzy tried to blow the doll up on the beach.
What? That sounds like Ozzy.
You want to know what happened after he did that?
Please, fill me in.
He got a staph infection in his thumb, and it put him in the hospital. He almost died.
Wow.
Then after that, he cracked his head open. After that, he had pneumonia that almost killed him. There was some type of an accident where he severely injured his back. He's still suffering from that. But the weirdest thing, the guy who owned Robert the Dollar, who was his companion, died of complications from Parkinson's disease.
Wow.
The latest health thing for Ozzy is diagnosed with Parkinson's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you'll see shows with him where he says that he blames the doll for all of his issues.
And there's a history of these kinds of stories associated with Robert, right? Visitors who come to see him disrespect him now that he is out there for the public to see, and then literally write letters afterwards asking for forgiveness.
Absolutely. And, the stories in Key West that I've tracked back, Robert's really cool because we know where he came from. For a long time, people didn't, but I was able to track them down to the Steiff Company in Germany in 1904. So we know his true origin story.
Okay.
And then we've talked to people in Key West going back to the 1950s who saw the doll in the window and talked about it moving,
right,
or work people who were in the house and had an experience. And then after the house was sold and more people had access to the doll, that's when the stories really start exploding. And then he disappeared. So people stopped talking about him.
Uh-huh.
And it was really just because he had left the home that he was in. And there was Myrtle Reuter. She took him. She's the one who donated him to the museum in 1994 after he locked her in a room. And then he was locked away again. Once I told people on the ghost tour, hey, go ask if you can see the doll. Enough people asked that they put him on display. And that's when letters started coming in. And today he has over 10,000 letters.
Jeez.
Amazing.
And these are all from people who believe that they were cursed by him or had some malady associated with him?
A lot of them are.
Yeah.
I'd say more than half are from that. And it used to be that most of them were. But today you get a lot of people who are wishing him a happy birthday or saying, hey, Robert, thanks for being so nice to me. It was great to see you.
Well, and I see on your website you allow people to send emails to Robert that will be read to him, correct?
Yeah, and we just started doing that because, we always like the letters coming in because they become part of the archives with Robert. Mm-hmm. So that's what the museum wants to do. But then a lot of people today, now that Robert's really spreading to new generations, it's reaching people all over the world, and it's not the easiest thing for them to all write a letter and then find a stamp and mail it. And so we were getting a lot of phone calls through the ghost tour.
Okay.
Of people wanting to talk to Robert or for us to pass on a message. And so to try to get away from that, we put it up where they can email. And it's great because that way we can read the letters. Sometimes if people ask, we're able to film us doing that with a spirit box running or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's wild to me how just astoundingly popular Robert has become over the last couple of decades, just from the legend stemming from the whole Otto family on through having him displayed at Fort East Martello. You walk into the fort, I've been there several times. Half of their gift shop area is Robert the Doll merchandise. I mean, he must be a hell of a boon for that as a tourist location.
Absolutely. When I moved to Key West, Fort East Martello was, it's an old Civil War fort. It has a collection of Key West history, a lot of industry stuff, but it wasn't a museum that a lot of people sought out. They might get a couple visitors a day, but it's a nonprofit organization, and the fort's operated by the Key West Art and Historical Society. They're the ones who own Robert the Doll. But they also operate the Key West Lighthouse, the old Custom House of Tennessee Williams. So they were able to continue operating it even though it didn't make money. Once Robert came out on display, they started getting more people every day. We were sending them from the ghost tour. And so that's probably the first time that Fort East Martello started generating revenue. Since the 50s. It's really cool. Back when it turned into a museum instead of a fort, Gene Otto, Robert's companion, was instrumental in making it a museum and creating galleries, and he held a lot of his art shows there. And he never had any idea that Robert the Doll would end up there. But to get back to your question, so Robert, his popularity started growing and growing. The TV shows really gave him more and more exposure. And then there's a local trolley company that does ghost tours, Ghosts and Gravestones. They started going to see Robert, because he's not in Old Town. It wasn't a place I could walk people on my tour. Mm-hmm. So when they started driving people out there, there were, 100 people a night hearing the story. And that really helped it to spread.
Sure.
More word of mouth, getting it out there. So he's gone through these stages where his reputation continues to grow. So I'd say, getting out on display was the first one. Getting the mass tourism from the trolleys was the second one. And, the different TV shows. But Jack Osborne really took it next level.
David, I want to step back a little bit because I think because Brad and I are such fans of Robert and always have been for years, I think we sometimes forget that there actually are still people out there who may not understand the story behind Robert. So I want to ask you a two-part question here. Bring us back first, how he came to be with Gene Otto and the relationship there and how that developed, but also to bring us back to, we were talking about Ozzy and how he disrespected Robert and then all this bad stuff came upon him. explain what happens, like how people should approach him when they come to see him in Key West, and what the legend is around that. But if you can break those off into two parts and kind of just give us a brief history.
Sure. So the doll arrived in Key West around 1904. And it was given as a gift to a little boy named Robert Eugene Otto. And by all accounts, the boy became infatuated with the doll. He gave it his own name, Robert, and started going by Gene for the rest of his life. And they spent all of their time together. And they say that whenever the boy got in trouble for, things that kids do, he wouldn't take the blame. He'd say, I didn't do it. Robert did it. Mm-hmm. They say that his parents used to hear two distinct voices coming from his room. They'd go to see who he was with, and they'd find it was just him and Robert the doll. They said he used to push his nanny into a little closet beneath the turret room, which was his playroom, and he'd hold the door so she couldn't get out. And again, when confronted with that, I didn't do it. Robert did it. And this goes on through his life. There was a time he left the house. Robert was locked away up in the back of the house in the attic. But when he returned with his wife, this abuse started up again. And the whole dynamic changed once they were around the doll. And this good marriage got a little weird. And same thing, he'd push her into that closet. And when confronted with it, he'd say, I didn't do it. Robert did it.
Love it. So that's and then as he goes on and he passes away, Robert stays with the home for a while until you said in the 90s there is when he was finally given away. Is that correct?
Yeah, so Myrtle Reuter bought the house. Gene died in 1974. His wife died a few years later. He wrote her out of the will, so wow. She had to sell the house. She couldn't afford to stay there anymore. And so what happened is he wrote her out of the will where his sister got everything in the house, which was his valuable art and this great collection of furniture from Europe, really valuable stuff. So she sold the house for, I think, $50,000 to Myrtle Reuter. Wow. And when Myrtle got in, Myrtle was the next one. I talked to some of her family, and they said that after she was around that doll, she was never the same. They described what a wonderful woman she was, so funny and full of life. And then, it just got progressively worse. She ended up having a divorce. They sold the house. She took Robert with her to her new home. And that's when people thought he went missing. And the doll sat out on her porch for a long time. That's where the termites got him. They gave him that distinct look on his face. Mm-hmm. And she had him. And like I said earlier, she brought him to the museum. She came in. I talked to the guy who was there when she brought him in. And he said that she was frantic. And she said, this is Gene Otto's doll. It's haunted. You've got to take him. And he said, okay, we can do that, but, it might be a valuable doll. Are you sure you want to do this? And she said, I've had this doll for a long time with no issues, but last night he pushed me into my room and held the door so I couldn't get out.
Wow. So the stories came back of being pushed in and locked into a room.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And she filled out the paperwork, and she left, died 101 days later.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, there's just so many, and whether they be coincidental or if there's actually something to these legends around Robert. I mean, you've told me before, David, too, that all of this hoopla that's been built up, there's people saying that it was a voodoo doll originally, and obviously you got to the bottom of that and disproved that, but just the legend and lore that surround him. It's such a Key West staple anymore. I mean, one of the first time I went to Key West, one of the first things I wanted to do was go see Robert the Doll. Mm-hmm. That was what I knew about Key West, that and Hemingway's house there. Those were the two things that I had to hit when I went there. So outside of just building up the forts business, I have to think it's been great for Key West tourist business.
It's been incredible for Key West. A lot of people do travel there just to see Robert the Doll. And like you said, Hemingway and Robert the Doll, those are two of the top attractions.
Yeah. That doesn't surprise me at all. And while we're on the topic, I guess we can maybe broach a little thing we have coming up this winter.
Yes.
I guess going into spring, the Robert the Doll weekend down Key West way.
Am I excited for this?
Now,
Yeah, this is going to be something else.
Yeah, so Tim, you've never been to Key West yet, correct?
I have not, and much like you, though, Brad, when I finally was going to get a chance to go for the first time, my number one destination was going to be Robert the Doll.
Yeah. So we've just released, in fact, Tim, David, the three of us, along with Dustin Perry of Ghost Hunters International, have worked up this event. Mainly David. I don't want to take too much credit for it because this is down in your wheelhouse. But a Robert the Doll weekend. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit more about that, David?
Sure. Well, we've always done the nightly tours there, and we've added investigations afterwards. The little VIP experience, but that works so well that we've, for me, I've always just stuck with doing the one thing. Even though there was so much more opportunity to do other things, there wasn't a team. So after I saw what you guys do at Michigan Paracon and thought, wow, and then when you reached out about wanting to do something, I thought, yeah, let's do it. So, it's really kind of a perfect marriage. And now we're able to do the things where we rent out the entire artist house, where we offer tours inside of there with small groups, where we take a dozen people at a time, and they'll get to see the behind the scenes of the Otto family and where Robert spent so much time. Doing more intense investigations up at 40 Martello, instead of spending 2 hours there, spending 4 hours there and having all of us there doing different things. It's because Robert's not the only spirit there. I mean, we've documented well over 42 spirits. There's incredible Civil War history from when it was a yellow fever hospital. And there's so much going on that this is going to be something else.
It's going to be fun, and I should mention, it's limited to 145 tickets being sold. We have a venue for presentations. We have, obviously, the fort. You will get to investigate Robert the Doll himself, along with the rest of the fort. And tickets are available right now at ghostkeywest.com. You can go there and hit the link. We also have a room block set up at North... what was the hotel, David? I'm sorry, North 54?
It's
54 North.
It's 24 North.
24. I knew there was a 4.
It's 24 North because it's 24 degrees north of Havana.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, and that's a really cool property. One side faces the ocean or faces water. So, and it's beautiful. They just redid a lot of the rooms. For our paranormal weekend, they actually want to go to hauntedkeywest.com. I do ghost tour ticket sales through the ghostkeywest.com.
Okay.
So hauntedkeywest.com, and if they click on paranormal weekend, that'll take them right to our page with all the details and booking links. We've also got the discount room rate.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
At 24 North. So.
Yeah, and we should let everyone know, too, that's very limited, the room block right now. So we're going there March 14th through 16th, and that is going to be an amazing weekend all around.
Yeah, and if you follow myself, this is Tim and Brad, and if you follow David or Dustin Perry on Facebook, social media, all the links are on there, too. Just go to our personal pages or the Creaking Door Paranormal Radio page as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a couple of other cool things we're doing. Anybody who wants to get there early on Thursday night, we're going to do a little haunted happy hour.
Yeah, you had me at happy hour.
Everybody can meet up with people, with the other people attending and go between 4 different bars and just kind of start the hauntings early.
I love it.
And then I think. We have one VIP ticket left, I believe.
As of the recording of this show, we had one left.
And that includes a seance at the artist house.
Man, oh man.
up in the turret room.
Yeah.
Which is going to be really cool.
So, as we're encouraging people to be a part of this weekend with us, David, and of course other listeners who are just going to go on their own and end up in Key West and visiting Robert, I want to make sure we touch on the whole, how do you not get Robert upset at you? Like, how do you approach him? What do you do? How do you make sure Robert stays on your good side?
I'll tell you this, there's 2 legends about Robert the Doll that are completely false that people won't stop repeating. And the first one is that he inspired Chucky the Doll. So Chucky, in those Chucky movies, you can talk to the guy who wrote them, and he says that was inspired by the My Buddy doll.
Okay.
No,
yeah.
Yeah. So that's not true. Now Robert was around for a long time before that. So the whole haunted doll thing can be traced back to Robert, but he's not directly responsible. The other thing is that you have to ask permission from Robert to take a picture, which is ridiculous. That's a human perpetuated legend, and it stemmed from when Robert went on display. People started having problems with batteries. And the things the batteries were in at the time were cameras and pacemakers. So all these camera problems started happening, but then the camera problems went beyond just the batteries. People would go home and get their film developed, and the entire roll would come out except for the photos of Robert. One guy, I had a friend who ran the photo developing place here. He said he started asking people if they had been to the fort because when he had pictures of Robert, sometimes it wouldn't print, the others would get stuck on the photo of Robert and just print until he ran out of a developing fluid or film. So that legend, I mean, here's the thing. The problem I have with that legend is now people say, oh, well, I didn't ask for permission and nothing happened to me. Mm-hmm. And so it kind of diminishes what Robert's really about. I preach to people that you should not ask permission from an entity because there's multiple spirits at Robert. And when you ask permission, you're lowering yourself on the totem pole. You're kind of putting them up above you. And that can be very dangerous when you're dealing with these dark entities. Okay. So I tell people, be respectful.
Yeah.
I think one of the spirits inside of Robert's a child. So you talk to it like you talk to a child, and you don't just demand them around. You're nice, but you're kind of straightforward. I think as long as people respect the doll, they don't have issues. The people I've seen have issues are people who flip them off or stick their tongue out at them. Or, some people say, I didn't ask for permission and I got cursed. And here's the deal with that. Their intent was disrespectful.
Sure.
It's like, because it used to say on the wall right there in the museum, remember, ask for Robert's permission before you take his picture. So people would see that and be like, I'm not doing that. And that's disrespect. Yeah, but normally it's a lot more disrespectful for the people who have the really bad stuff happen.
Yeah. So it's really about respect and the intent. So, yeah, that makes complete sense. One last question, David, before we let you go. You were talking about the Chucky movies and Child's Play. Is there any rumor, I remember hearing this way back when, to the 2016 film, The Boy, that one, which is about a haunted doll. Is there any rumor, do you know, of Robert kind of influencing that film?
Nobody's ever come out and said that, but okay. I think it's fairly evident that there's some inspiration going on there.
Sure, yeah.
And then there was a series. There was a series of like unauthorized Robert the Doll movies that small filmmaker from Wales, and so they weren't authorized movies, and they fit the genre that he did. They're B movies or I don't want to say too much because he's passed away. He's not here to defend himself. The last movie he did, I think it was Robert Returns, and after he did that, he became very ill, and they didn't know what was wrong with him. It got to the point where he couldn't get out of bed, and then he was evicted from his flat. They couldn't afford an ambulance to move him. They did a fundraiser. It didn't catch up. I mean, it's a really tragic story
Wow.
that I can't help but think is tied to Robert the Doll.
With the intent, right? Yeah.
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 So,
Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating, and again, it as what you said, it all comes down to intent, and if his intent was, making money off of something he didn't have the rights to, who knows? But as he said, he's no longer here, so we'll leave it at that. I've never watched any of those.
I
movies.
saw the first one.
Did you?
Let's be honest, it was pretty bad.
Yeah,
it was pretty bad.
It was of the B genre, so
Definitely.
yeah. All right, David, before we let you go, how can people find out more about you and your tours and Robert the Doll? What is the best way to do that?
So if people want to book tours on the Robert the Doll experience, ghostkeywest.com is the website for that. But what I encourage people to do is go to hauntedkeywest.com. That's a free haunted directory that I set up, where it's not just my tour. It's got haunted hotels. It's got haunted restaurants, haunted museums, hidden cemeteries. I've got a free cemetery map that has some of the ghost graves in there. I occasionally do some blogs in there about different stuff. And then I also have a listing of the best locally owned ghost tours in Key West, because, my tour is not the right one for everyone. Sometimes another tour is going to fit them better. So I list the local ones. There's a couple, there's a few outfits that are national, that are operating, and in Key West they have trouble with the turnover and things like that. And they just can't offer what the local ones do.
Sure.
So if people are into ghosts and they're coming to Key West, go to hauntedkeywest.com. You can find everything else from there. If they want to follow me on Instagram, I post a lot of updates on Robert, and I'm David L. Sloan on there.
There you go. He is David L. Sloan, and he is the authority behind Robert the Doll. And remember, in March, you can hang out with Brad and myself and David and Dustin Perry with Robert in Key West. Check that out as well. David Sloan, thank you so much, our friend, for taking time to be with us inside the creaking door.
I can't wait to see you all in Key West.
All right, man. We'll see you soon. And we're going to take a break. When we come back, we've got more on the way with Creaking Door Paranormal Radio, powered by BridgeFM.net podcasts. Think of Michigan's Upper Peninsula as this scary attic sitting there above the rest of the state. I can think of no better guides to take you inside the history and lore than the guys of the Upper Peninsula Paranormal Research Society. Those are the words from writer and lead researcher for the hit TV show Ghost Adventures, Jeff Belanger. For over 20 years, the Upper Peninsula Paranormal Research Society has dedicated their lives to researching the paranormal. And now, some of their favorite cases are brought to life on the pages of their debut book, Supernatural Haunts. Come inside these pages with the team as they share intimately the history of each location and their experiences during their investigation. Learn their techniques and some of the most intense moments they have faced. True stories and true accounts of ghosts await you inside the pages of Supernatural Haunts by the Upper Peninsula Paranormal Research Society. Get your autographed copy today at www.supernaturalhaunts.com.
Intrepid explorers Duff and Shaw landed their airship in the heart of the World's Fair, unveiling their latest exotic snacks and confections from their adventures in parts unknown. Have you yet tasted their mysterious dark chocolate almonds straight from the shadows of the Himalayas, a recipe only known by the Yeti himself? Or from the deepest heart of the jungle, a sacred gummy, so captivating it was worshipped by ancient tribes? Have you dared seize the forbidden sour gummy, the treasured confection of the pharaohs? Or have you braved Duff and Shaw's secret spicy Buffalo Ranch cashews, crafted by the king of the cryptids himself, the elusive Sasquatch? Have you indulged in the sour cherry eggs from the shadowy Mothman, or from local legend Prissy, the monster of Lake Superior? These snacks and many more are available at duffandshaw.com or at your fine local establishments, Mystery Town, USA, Cup of the Day, and Great Lakes Gifts. Run, don't walk, to gobble them up before the season ends. Until next time, adventurers, Duff and Shaw's legendary snacks. Snacks too good to stay a mystery.
And Welcome back inside Creek and Door Paranormal Radio with Tim Ellis and Brad Blair. Once again, want to thank our guest David Sloan and all things Robert the Doll. We knew we were looking forward to that interview, and such great information, and really a full interview as far as people who may not have understood exactly who Robert the Doll was or the legend behind him.
Yeah, and David's such a great guy. I've gotten to be good friends with him over the last few years, and my wife and I have hit Key West up, I think, the last 3 winters now. And David's an amazing host. And just to be able to work this event with him coming up in March, it's going to be great.
It is.
It's going to be great. It's such an in-depth, this has never been done before, ghostly tour, ghostly weekend of not just Robert the Doll, but all of Key West.
Yep.
And some of the things that we've got lined up. It's all online right now. You can check all that out at hauntedkeywest.com. I believe it is Paranormal Weekends.
Yes.
Is the tag under that. But follow us on social media. We'll be updating that as we go. Like I said, it's only 145 tickets, which are probably going to sell through pretty fast the way things are looking right now. But get on, check that out. Not the only event by far that we have coming up in the coming months.
No, we've got a very busy schedule coming up, as we usually do. As one event that has already passed, which was the September 20th, 21st weekend, and always a great time in Houghton Lake, was the Michigan UFO Contact event. Always a great time there. I know in November, I will be in Dundee, Michigan at Old Mill Parafest coming up.
Who else is on that card?
We've got Jeff Belanger, John Tenney, Todd Clements. We've got Brian Danhausen. We've also got Mary Bassett. And Robin Terry is going to be there.
Very solid lineup.
Yeah, it is. It is. So, yeah, it'll be always a good time to get down there, too. And that's a fundraiser for the Old Mill, so always a good time there.
And then, of course, we always take the holiday season off, or attempt to, but we'll be right back on the road the end of February. You and I are both going to be at the Missouri Paracon, the inaugural, happening in Kansas City. You can get info on that at MissouriParacon.com. People along the lines of Chip Coffey, Amy Bruni, Steve Gonzalez, Dave Tango, Adam Barry, Shane Pittman. It's a great all-star lineup.
Solid.
That's going to be a 2-day event coming the end of February. Of course, middle of March, as we've been talking about, the Robert the Doll weekend.
Yeah, exactly. So get your tickets for that as well. Earlier in March, Potograph's Parafest, which will be back at Houghton Lake as well. Excited to be a part of that one. Bill Konkoleski, Shane Pittman, Dustin Perry, John Tenney, and many others will be there as well. So that will be another one on our schedule.
And then looking out to next September, almost a year out, but never too early to plan.
Never is.
Sage Paracon USA at Belle Grove. I'll be speaking at that one in Virginia. Again, just follow Tim and I on our socials, and we'll be updating these schedules coming up shortly. As always, much going on, and I'm sure there will be much more added to it as we go along.
But it's how we like it. We get to stay out there and do all the spooky stuff that we love.
Tis.
Yes.
And I just, this whole Robert thing, I know we've been going back and forth on this for the last month or so, working on final preparations. So great to see the tickets finally available on this.
Yes.
And as I said, if you're interested in that, make sure you get them quickly, because they are very limited.
And I am sure by the time this episode airs, the VIP will be sold out. But
there's one left right now.
Right now.
And that's after 1 day of sales.
Right. But get online, click on the link, and that'll give you all the details.
The general admission ticket has so much involved with it that, it's going to be a great weekend. Hopefully the first.
Yeah,
I know David would like to continue on and make this an annual event. So fingers crossed everything goes well, and you will have another chance in 2026 to join us once again in Key West.
With Robert the Doll. All right, there we go. That's going to do it for this episode of Creek and Door Paranormal Radio. Usually right now we do a little thing we call mailbag, but we are just getting the show fired back up. So remember, if you ever want to submit a question or a ghost story or something to Brad and I, we will share it during this segment on mailbag, and you can do that by going to Creek and Door Paranormal Radio on Facebook and submit it through a private message that way. But on behalf of my co-host Brad Blair, myself, Tim Ellis, thank you for coming on inside the Creek and Door Paranormal Radio, powered by BridgeFM.net podcasts.
The Creaking Door.